Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You're listening to the powerhouse blowtorch signal of Talk Radio 77 WABC, out of the center of the universe, New York City, and around the world. As we welcome you no matter where you are, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dr. Sky Experience. We like to call it, magically, Theater of the Mind, as we continue to talk about the great subjects of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests in the mix, and let's not forget, equally important stories of American exceptionalism about truth, justice, and the American way. We appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to get in, of course, with our great guest in the conversation mode, we like that in the form of dialogue. With what we like also is critical thinking, but we don't always get that, but it's your choice indeed. The contact number, as always, is 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our helmsmen, both Tony and Bill, who helped navigate this signal so you're hearing it as good and proud and loud as you would expect. So many things, ladies and gentlemen, but a brief introduction of some of our events that we'll be talking about here in our Theater of the Mind program as we continue on the Dr. Sky Experience. In just a few minutes, in hour number 1, we'll be introducing ourselves to an astronomer. He's a good friend of mine and someone that knows so much about the visual side of the nighttime sky. And we'll be talking with Kevin McEwen. And he has a lot to say, ladies and gentlemen, because many of you out there might have questions, and I'm sure you do, about how to see and maybe use a telescope or a pair of binoculars, and don't discount those at being able to see some of these amazing sky objects. We'll delve into the subject of eclipses. We'll talk about equipment that you yourself can use and how to use it, and so much more. But in hour number 2 on this iteration of the Dr. Sky Experience, we go to Dave Whittington, a regular guest here on this radio program of geoengineeringwatch.org. He, Dave Whittington, is going to update us on many of the things that we see, those long streaks in the sky. Many call them contrails, and other people do not. And also legislation here in Arizona and other parts of the nation to ban, not necessarily do I like the word ban, but in this particular case, ways to prevent geoengineering, cloud seeding, and any other man-made manipulation of the skies above us, an important part of this radio show. And boy, do we have a great show also. Tomorrow, Saturday night, midnight to 2 a.m. Sunday morning, Eastern Standard Time. Special guest, Dr. Don Lincoln of the Fermi Labs on particle physics, the mystery of what lies beneath the atom. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, the Fermi Labs, located right near the big city of Chicago, Illinois, has been working on what's beneath that particular part of the atom and so many of the strange particles that have been discovered. What makes that make sense to all of us out there as we busy our lives? And they're also responsible for talking about CERN, one of the most massive particle accelerators on the planet Earth. And many people out there have wondered, are they messing with reality by doing these experiments? We'll set that straight and talk about something you might have read about but probably didn't understand. And with the expert, Dr. Don Lincoln of Fermi Labs, we'll talk about the Higgs boson. 1-800-848-9222 is how to get into our Theater of the Mind. And as we sit there in our studio and our stage, we now bring on our very first guest. And a brief introduction. Kevin McEwen is a serious stargazer and a man of astronomy, the visual side of the many wonders of the cosmos. A native from Huntington, Long Island, Kevin moved to Colorado in 1972 to attend the Colorado School of Mines. Kevin worked on his degrees in geologic engineering, and then on to New Mexico for a master's degree. He is a true observer of the nighttime sky, and here to share his experience with you and the rest of the audience on the wonders of the heavens. And with that, we welcome Kevin McEwen. Kevin, good morning. Thanks for staying up with us, and how are you this morning?
Pretty good, yeah. Thanks for inviting me, Stephen. I really appreciate this.
I appreciate you. And for many years, I know you were listening to me on other national programs, and you always gave, high marks, at least from the sense of not me standing on a soapbox, But at least we talked about what we're going to get into right now, not the physics of the subject of astronomy. Obviously, people can learn that in school, but more to the side of how to enjoy the wonders of the nighttime sky. So, Kevin, obviously a native of Long Island, you moved out here to the west. You're in New Mexico currently. Tell us your passion for this subject, because it's very much addictive to many people who love the beauty of simply going out at night and looking up at the wonders that are out there.
Well, I got my start in stargazing back in 1962 when I first saw the Orion Nebula in a pair of binoculars. But that was in Plainview, New York, when the night sky back then was actually pretty darn good. And then when we moved to Huntington, the Andromeda Galaxy was actually a naked eye object back in 1965. So the skies back then were actually pretty good.
Yes. And we've talked about light pollution as the big nemesis for everybody. And let me mention, too, also, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in light-polluted cities like New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, we want to leave you with some positivity here, that there's still many, many things that you can actually see in the nighttime sky. And let's begin with this conversation, Kevin, that I think is so fascinating. The mysterious subject of eclipses. And I know both of us have this long history of observing both lunar and solar eclipses. But I want to get into some of the meat. You claim to have seen how many lunar eclipses? I find that incredible. How many have you watched?
Well, about 22 to my recollection. And those are total lunar eclipses. So partial lunar eclipses, you can add in maybe another 10. So I know I'm dating myself, but the funny thing is, living in western United States, I've never missed a total lunar eclipse. And we have a really nice one coming up here on March 3rd, so don't miss that.
Absolutely. People all over the listening audience of this particular radio show, the Dr. Sky Experience, will be filling you in as we get closer to that. And maybe, if time permits, give them a little tip on that. But the mysterious one, Kevin, and I know many people out there may have questions about this, the wonders and beauty of solar eclipses, and particularly those of totality. Talk about your experiences with total eclipses of the sun and how rare they are.
Well, the problem with a total solar eclipse is it covers a very small portion of the Earth's surface, whereas a total lunar eclipse can fill an entire side of Earth, okay? So to see a total solar eclipse, you have to do some traveling, basically, unless it comes to your doorstep, like in 2017, Wyoming, or 2024 up from Texas to Vermont. You know, so
that's amazing.
Yeah.
You're so right about that. And I want to go back in time to something that I find fascinating for our New York area listeners, the tri-state area. Back on January the 25th of 1925, how about that? There was this total solar eclipse that was visible in the New York City area. Now, many people may be wondering, well, why do I need to know about something that happened more than 100 years ago? Well, here's an interesting point. People that lived, let's say, north of 96th Street in Manhattan got to see the totality, and if you were just south of that, you were not in the path of totality. But there's a reason I'm mentioning this, and this, to me, ties both, Kevin, with the aviation side that we talk about and astronomy. I didn't realize this until somebody emailed me this, and the email went like this. Dr. Sky, why don't you share with your audience something else that happened in that New York City eclipse of January 25, 1925, and what was that? The Germans had built these gigantic Zeppelins, and this one was known in Germany as LZ-126. It was brought over to the United States as ZR-3. Why am I mentioning this? It was a 658-foot-long gigantic Zeppelin. And what they did, the astronomers, this is the first time in history that people actually got into an airborne position in which they watched the total eclipse. So that thing was flying around or floating around the New York area, and the astronomers on board, because of the limited visibility, they got some rather poor images. But that's incredible that this giant airship was floating over New York City. And I wonder out there, ladies and gentlemen, for anybody whose grandparents may have shared that experience or talked about it, not only seeing the eclipse, but Kevin, can you imagine seeing this large Zeppelin, which was then called the USS Los Angeles, taking part in an observation right over the city of New York? That's amazing.
Well, first of all, what's interesting about that eclipse was, I think it was about 10 degrees above zero in New York City that day.
You said it well, yes. Right.
And but there has been an effort to chase total solar eclipses to get a better view of the sun's corona at very high altitude or high elevation. For instance, the great cross-country total solar eclipse in 1878, there were missions to the top of some of the 14ers in Colorado to observe the sun's corona.
Precisely.
I think Pikes Peak was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You're
but
right.
that was an incredible eclipse.
And Thomas Edison, of great electric fame and other great inventions, phonographs, ... He also was out in Rawlings, Wyoming, I understand.
Right.
As a young man, imagine in those days, with all that equipment that they had to bring out there to the desolation at the time, that must have been some heck of an experience. But ladies and gentlemen, if you've had experience with the eclipses, I'd love to hear from you because there's a safe way to do this. Obviously, these solar glasses are the way to view it safely, but are they all safe? And our conversation, goes to the phone number, 1-800-848-9222 to all the listeners out there of the Dr. Sky experience. But let's go back. My first total eclipse was March 7, 1970. I remember driving down with my dad. I couldn't drive, but he did. Down to Perry, Florida. We were in a big rainstorm. We got to see nothing but darkness and rain. But then the beat goes on. So talk about the wonders of these eclipses, because I find this to be amazing, Kevin. If anybody's not seen one, we have some information on future ones that people might be able to see.
They're very addictive. And as more and more eclipses occur around the world, there's more and more effort to go see them. And we have a really big one coming up here in 2027, and that's the one that you can actually see from Spain, okay?
Yes.
And but the problem you have is many of these eclipses now are booked up, okay? So I don't know what to say. I didn't get in my, my booking yet, so I don't know what I'm going to do.
No, I know. You'd spend a lot of money to see these, and some of these folks are very addicted, whether they be cruise ships. I wonder how many listeners have ever been on a cruise ship to see one of these. But I don't want to spend the whole program on this, but I wanted to highlight, with your education to add to this conversation, August the 12th of 2026, the observational opportunity occurs where? Somewhere over Spain. It starts in other, maybe inaccessible places. But if people want to see one of these, talk about that eclipse for a moment, if you will.
Well, the problem with that eclipse is it comes in over, I believe, Iceland, and then heads down near Greenland, and then ends in Spain. But when it ends in Spain, the sun will be very low in the sky. So I'm not thinking about going to that eclipse, although the astronomy club I belong to is offering a package for about $7,500 to go to Spain. But the sun is going to be very low in the sky, so you may not see the corona that well.
Yes, that's important. You know, if you want to get the most out of a total solar eclipse, folks, if you haven't seen one, and again, we're not doing this as far as being a tourist, touring agency or a travel agency by any means, but this is fascinating. Here's the big one that I would like you to comment on. This one's fascinating, and maybe many people now have a chance to book or do something with an eclipse like this. August 2, 2027. The story goes like this, ladies and gentlemen. The longest total solar eclipse that you'll probably ever see in your lifetime. Nothing can be longer than about 7.5 minutes, let's say. But this one will be well into the high sixes. And where will it be best? How about this? If you can be in Egypt, along the Nile, in areas that have so many artifacts of Egyptology, pyramids and stuff. Can you imagine being in that area, seeing something that the ancient Egyptians looked to with great accuracy and predictability? Isn't that amazing?
It's going to, I should add, it's going to go directly over the pyramids, okay?
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
that's totally
that time of the year in Egypt, there's virtually no chance of a cloudy sky or rain.
Yes, that's a good thing. And it'll be very dry, ladies and gentlemen, and extremely warm. Yeah. But like here in Phoenix, obviously we're used to the heat. But the good part about this eclipse is, if you're going to make that kind of a journey, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have names of travel agencies. You can look that up yourself. Obviously, a most momentous experience. And Kevin, you've seen how many of these total eclipses? I mean, this is something to mark. Many people have seen one or none, but how many have you seen?
Well, I've seen 4, okay, which is pretty good. But there was a fellow from the New York City area, Barry Gordon, who chased total solar eclipses from around the world after his retirement, and he was said to have seen 22 of them.
Amazing. Totally
That's crazy.
Incredible. It is. The excitement for those that haven't seen it, not to steal the thunder away from actually seeing one, you get this anticipation. We were up in Idaho in the area when we watched the August eclipse in 2017, August 21st. And that, to me, was one of the most memorable events because all the other total eclipses either had rain, I had bad skies, everybody else had some disappointment. But in that one, I know you were out there in the western states, we got to see something really strange. So describe this thing just before totality. You see this amazing shadow coming at you, which looks like the end of the world, if there's such a description. And then you get to see what, Kevin? You describe it because it's something you have to see, folks, if you want to talk about one of the best sights in nature.
Well, first of all, you want to know which direction to look to see what looks like a thunderstorm moving in, and that's the Earth's shadow coming in over you.
Right.
Okay? But when the sun goes out, I have to warn people to be very careful to not look at the direct sun, except in the few seconds before totality. You can actually look at a phenomenon called the diamond ring effect, okay? And that's the last bit of sun present, and then the inner corona forms the ring of the diamond ring, and it's got to be the most beautiful and memorable part of a total solar eclipse I've ever seen.
Yes. I have seen it a few times, and maybe listeners out there have. If you have questions about all these things in the generic world of astronomy, Kevin McKeown, he's with us. He's our special guest at the top of hour number 1. And he's here, ladies and gentlemen, to share not the science, the technical stuff, the wonders and beauty about going out there in the nighttime sky. Because I read your columns and your emails that you send, and ladies and gentlemen, he gives us a very good analysis of things from what I consider to be the practical side of the world. What's that when you're looking at the sky? He talks about seeing these beautiful things that you can see. And even if you live in a light polluted city, there's still objects we're going to get to, folks. So there's not despair out there. But of course, the deeper and darker you get away, from the lights of cities, you get away from the lights, common sense prevails that would help you in your viewing of the nighttime sky. And that is fascinating, Kevin, to talk about, because your observing location is where? In the environs of Albuquerque, New Mexico, am I right?
Yeah, but Albuquerque's night sky is pretty bad now, so I have to get, say, 40 or 50 miles out of town to get a nice sky with the Milky Way present. So
Interesting. And I wonder how many listeners have ever seen the Milky Way, because according to statistics, and I read like you do, it's amazing. It's like maybe 1/5 of the entire world population. And if we push it to 8 billion souls, they've never seen this majestic big arm of the galaxy. And some may say, well, why do I even care about seeing it? Well, let me try to change the subject and not be a convincing person, but do it through the beauty of what's simply out there. You don't have to have a PhD in the subject to enjoy it, and just to see think of it this way. And I don't want to go on too long here. Imagine what the people 100 or 200 years ago had when they could look at the sky. That was more like, how do I say this? That was more like therapy, don't you think, than compared to what we can't see today?
Well, there's one question I get asked from time to time. When I'm out with stargazers out in the country looking at the Milky Way, I get the question, can we ever go to the Milky Way? And the answer to that is, you are part of the Milky Way, okay? Because your gravity of your body is applying to the entire Milky Way galaxy. So you don't have to go anywhere to be part of the Milky Way galaxy.
Kevin, you say it so well. We're part of this big spiral, one of trillions of galaxies. So when we move into Saturday night's program and into Sunday morning on the Dr. Sky Experience, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of those technical questions about things that we talk about that even the great scientists, if they're honest about it, and most are, they really don't know what dark energy and dark matter is. And as we dig deeper, not into the big widespread view of the universe, but how about going deeper into the quanta, the tiniest of particulates in the world? And what do they say? The scientists say, Kevin, we only see 4% of the entire universe because of not of our inability. It's just that the rest of that big shebang is just not visible or understood by us at this point in time, correct?
Well, something like 80% of the makeup of our cosmos, our universe, is dark energy, okay? And no one knows what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
And then dark matter makes up another, 25% or thereabouts. And then baryon matter, what we're made out of, is only 5%, roughly.
Yeah,
so
you say it so well. the baryonic matter that we're made of, ladies and gentlemen. Again, not to diminish the value of the human nature or the human spirit or the human itself, but it's something that's why we do programs like this. That's how this whole thing started. The question is, and how can we learn about these many mysteries of the universe when we're busy during what? Our daytime hours that we run our lives for the most part. When the sun rules our lives, there's a whole nother world, ladies and gentlemen, out there, and we talk deeper into the night. Apropos for this program, don't you think? As we move way past the halfway mark of a month already into the new year, January 2026. Your questions, comments, and observations, as always, are welcome here as we talk about this Theater of the Mind program, the Dr. Sky Experience at 1-800-848-9222. We have a few minutes, Kevin, before the hard break in radio and television, as you know, at the bottom of the hour. So talk about the value of a pair of binoculars. And we'll carry this on after the break, too. Talk about the value of what you can do. You don't need a big, giant telescope if you're not financially ready or even technically ready.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing. Sorry.
Go ahead.
The interesting thing is I'll drag a big telescope out into the country to do some deep sky work, okay? But then what I find myself doing is putting out a lawn chair and just surveying the sky with a pair of 10 by 50 millimeter binoculars all night long.
That's amazing.
It's like, well, what did I do all night? Well, I just relaxed and had fun enjoying the night sky with binoculars.
That's right. Yeah, it brings to me a whole new level of kind of like awareness because, not to get overly philosophical, I mean, it's so beautiful, and who would deny that? I mean, if you're out there in tranquility and you have the rareness of a dark sky, and if people, like I said, don't despair, if you live in brightly lit cities, we're going to give some advice on what you can see throughout this entire calendar month, and you really don't have to go that far from the New York area, let's say, or any other major city out there. And a pair of binoculars. Describe what 10 by 50 means so everybody understands what that means.
10 by 50, it's 10x, so that's the power, the magnification, okay? And then 50 millimeters, that's 2-inch, so those are lenses that are 2 inches across, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, if you're older, like I am, you want to go with at least 10 power, or 10x, because when I was a kid, I was using 7 by 50 binoculars, and those have a very large exit pupil that can fit inside, young eyes like what I had. So if you're older than about 40 or 50 years, you want to go with 10 by 50 binoculars. Otherwise, your pupils are not going to open up wide enough to get all the light coming in from what's out there.
And another good reason for binoculars, let's say you're going to sporting events, if you're out there and interested in nature, we talk about the sanctity of birds and ornithology. We get experts on that show. You can use them for multi-purpose things and other imaginary things that I'm sure people can use them for. But the interesting thing here is, Kevin, when we talk about this, not bending anybody's arm, I mean, who would not think that a night out in the country, and that's what I'd like to hear from this audience. What was your most beautiful night? Where, and the kind of experience that you had when you looked deep into the nighttime sky. And right now, though, some of the other problems we'll bring up in the next portion of the Dr. Sky Experience after the break is now the plethora of man-made satellites, right, Kevin? I need to get you on a dark topic, but the sky is just, overpopulated with satellites visible in the sky.
Well, it's just crazy. And the Starlinks now are photobombing any astrophotography early in the evening and then before twilight. Now, the first thing I do usually when I'm out in a dark sky is break out the 10 by 50 binoculars and just watch dozens of Starlink satellites drifting through the field of view. And at times, I will see as many as 6 or 8 Starlinks at one time moving through my night sky low in the west or northwest. And it's just crazy.
I know. They're populating. Look, there's a value to what Starlink and Elon's doing. But unfortunately, from the astronomy community, we might be a small minority out there, which is a sad truth. But for the point is, if you go out in the nighttime sky, many of the things are not, they are UFOs to everybody if they don't know what they're seeing. Kevin, we got to take a break as we call this the hard break coming up here. Kevin McEwen is our special guest. We're at 1-800-848-9222. Subject matter, what you can see in the heavens. Advice from someone who knows this subject very well. That is our special guest. And when we continue on the other side of the Dr. Sky Experience, we'll get into more of how you can take advantage, even if you're a city dweller, and see some amazing sights. We'll be right back on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
A sunset is the sun's fiery kiss to the night. So says poet Crystal Woods. At 33 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, we continue with our Theater of the Mind presentation, the Dr. Sky Experience, now probing deeper into the mysteries of the night and how you can take advantage no matter where you live, whether it's a light-polluted city or the darkness of the countryside. There's something for everyone. Our special guest at the top of this hour is Kevin McEwen. He, of course, a serious stargazer and has taught this subject and is involved, ladies and gentlemen, in our conversation. Welcome back. Let's continue now to say hello and say good morning to Dale in Rye, New York. Hi, Dale. You're on with Kevin McEwen. How are you doing this morning?
Hello, Dr. Sky. Hello, Kevin. I experienced the March 7th, 1970 eclipse in Norfolk, Virginia. I was in the Navy at the time. I was on the USS Independence, CVA 62. Wow. We were tied up to Pier 12, and they let us go up on deck and watch the whole thing. And of course, it was, the sun disappearing and all. It was interesting, but the most interesting thing was the confusion of the seagulls. All the seagulls flew over, going to their nighttime roosts, and then when it got light again, they were coming back over, going the other way, back out to their feeding area.
It's amazing, wow. Dale. I was there in that eclipse, too. Where were you, may I ask, before Kevin responds? Where were you when you saw that in 1970?
It was Norfolk, Virginia, on that Pier 12 on the Navy base.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. But no, I do hear you now. That's fascinating. We were in Perry, Florida, not to be overly redundant. We were sitting out in the field, like a big football stadium, pouring rain, darkness came, no eclipse, but Kevin, isn't this interesting what Dale's telling us? This is fascinating to hear about.
The thing, let me share. I was at Montauk Point for that eclipse, and unfortunately, it wasn't 100%. It was only like 99.5% of totality. Mm-hmm. But the problem was that the cloud bank moved in right at mid-eclipse and obscured. It was actually possible to see the corona from Montauk Point, but the cloud bank ruined it. And by the way, 54 years later was the repeat of that same eclipse in the Saros cycle, and that was 2024. So if you add 54 to 1970, you get 2024. And I had to make sure I was going to see the eclipse in 2024. So I drove all the way to Burlington, Vermont to see that event.
Yes, that's amazing. Dale, I'm really happy to hear about, your observations there, but you get the last word. We always give our callers an opportunity to respond back. Please continue if you'd like.
I think we should wait around another 54 years for the next one. What do you think?
Yes. Well, I got some news for everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking news of our own. The New York City area, and Kevin, I think you probably know this, but Dale, here's some information and everybody out there. May 1, I know it's ridiculous, 2079, there will be a total solar eclipse that actually begins, I believe, right there in the New York City area. So Coney Island and Staten Island get to see the sun. How about this one? Literally on the ocean on the horizon in what would look like a total eclipse. That's the strangest one, don't you think, Dale? May 1st, 2079.
Wow. It would be interesting. I don't think I'm going to be around for that one.
We'll talk about some things, guys and gals, that have relevance to when you can see it. And that's why we mentioned, if I was a betting man, and sometimes I better be careful with eclipses, right there, Kevin, because you can bet all you want. But August 2 of 2027, Dale, is probably going to be what, as Kevin said, a guarantee, because it's right there by the pyramids, deep in the heart of Egypt along the Nile.
Yeah, that'll be just under 7 minutes. Now, I saw the Saros predecessor of that from Mazatlan, Mexico, and I had 6 minutes and 45 seconds of totality.
Right, and that doesn't seem like a lot to people, but when you look at total eclipses, every second counts. Dale, thanks for being part of the show. I hope we've answered, or at least you had a chance to testify about the March 7th, 1970 event. Thank you for being with us. I really appreciate it.
What's interesting, Dale mentioned the seagulls, but when I was at Mazatlan, we set up next to 13 beehives, okay? Commercial beehives. And when totality hit, we had millions of bees coming in from every direction.
Totally amazing. The animals do something. See, that's another subject. I mean, I'm not the expert on animal behavior, but I've watched birds, I've watched ants. I mean, but my attention where it should have been was up on shooting the thing in the cameras with our photo team. So that's interesting. Let's continue with the great callers here. Let's say good morning to Alexi in Queens. Alexi, good morning. You're on with Kevin McEwen. How you doing?
Good morning, gentlemen. I'm very happy to speak with you today.
Thank you.
Look, I have one or two questions for you. I recall there was a professor, and then now he's Dr. Abbott, who is a physicist, who conducted an experiment some 45 years ago concerning the effects of what happens when we have an eclipse of the sun. He was perched on a very tall building in New York City, and he had radiation detection equipment, specifically gamma rays, X-rays, and such. And as the eclipse proceeded, the count went up considerably. It went up quite high, and of course, when the eclipse is over, the count returns to normal. Can you explain that?
Kevin, that's fascinating. I know what we also talked about before is Thomas Edison developed something that he devised to detect infrared. But what do you know about that, Kevin? That's interesting what Alexi's talking about.
Now, exactly what was the caller doing or trying to describe? Was it an instrument on top of a building?
I think he was using an instrument, Alexi can say it better in his words, that was there to detect, as you said, Alexi, what? Something to do with energy from the sun or from the sky, and things decreased or increased during the eclipse. Which was it? They increased?
It was an increase during the eclipse of X-ray and gamma ray, quite an increase according to Dr. Abbott. And after the eclipse, it gradually returned to what one would call normal. Could you explain why that happened?
Kevin, you want to take a shot at it? I don't know that.
Yeah, because, see, X and gamma rays are not going to make it down to the Earth's surface. That's why you have to have satellites, up there in orbit about the Earth. But I'm just thinking it might have been possible to detect very soft X-rays coming in from the sun. But remember, the corona might have been the source of these X-rays. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking maybe I got to look up this experiment.
Yeah, I know, Alexia. I'm not familiar with it either. But going back to a similar experiment, not to be overly repetitive, we had this with Thomas Edison when he was in Rawlins, Wyoming. He developed, Kevin, this device that was detecting energy in the form of infrared rays from the sun. I mean, look at the genius there, trying to find out more about those mysteries. It's amazing.
Well, a lot of infrared can make it to the surface of the Earth, but still, that's another part of the spectrum that you need to put satellites in orbit.
Makes sense. That's why we flew on Sophia, the big 747 telescope that goes up into the high part of the stratosphere to get away from the moisture in the atmosphere. Alexi, you get the last word. We always give our callers an opportunity to respond. Go ahead.
In fact, I had a second question, but I will keep it brief. About 230 years ago, there was a French scientist. His name started with an L. I don't recall. He speculated that the planet originated by a close collision of the sun with another star, a very almost dead star, and it drew the material up, hence forming the solar system. Do you have any idea who that might have been?
Well, sounds like something that this Immanuel Velikovsky could have put out. But that might have been possible, but that would have occurred billions of years ago if it did happen, okay? I kind of doubt it. I want to say that the solar system was formed by a cloud of particles that condensed around the sun rather than pulling material off the sun. Now, the Earth may have been struck by something very early on in its origin that created the moon. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, here we go. One commentary. We got to go because of the time, not because we don't want to hear or listen or speak here. But the reality is, Alexei, there was a theoretical star called Nemesis. Yeah. And what that could be, Kevin knows about this too, that maybe millions of billions of years ago, there was a close encounter like a shaving to our star, the sun. And what you're saying, Alexei, could very well be true when material was pulled off to formulate what we call a solar system. But you know what, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen out there? It's probably such a long time ago, there's no definitive identified object which we know of officially with an orbit of an object like a star called Nemesis at this time. Alexei, thank you as always for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. And these are fascinating things. That's why we're glad to be able to have the microphone for the 2 hours on the Dr. Sky experience to talk about mysteries and the strangeness of the universe. Right, Kevin? This is interesting.
Well, I might mention that Nemesis and this Nibiru, this planet Nibiru, they've been thoroughly discredited. Yes. I mean, I'm not going to, call it just absolute nonsense, but these ideas have been discredited. And Nemesis was supposed to be a brown dwarf, but we can see brown dwarfs so easily with infrared telescopes now. There is no such thing as Nemesis.
You're absolutely right. Time is what the clock rules here. And again, we have to go to another break here in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still interested in calling, 1-800-848-9222. If you're Clyde in Texas, Mike in St. James, Robert in North Carolina, well, we'll try to get everybody on as we move to the top of the hour. We'll be right back on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The true joy of a moonlit night is something we no longer understand. Only men and women of old, when there were no lights, could understand the true joy of a moonlit night. Origin unknown. As we continue, 46 minutes, how time flies on the Dr. Sky Experience. Let's continue with our callers here. Let's say good morning to Clyde in the great Republic of Texas. You're on with Kevin McHugh.
Hey, have you ever heard of the Kessler effect?
Say again, sir?
Have you ever...
I'm sorry, we lost you again. Going for try number 3 there. Go ahead, sir.
I said, have you heard of the Kessler effect?
Oh, yes, I sure have. And that's when those satellites, if you get too many satellites and they all bang into each other, right, Clyde in Texas, you get just a disaster of material that's floating around up there that can be dangerous to other spacecraft. Kevin, you were describing the number of Starlink satellites. So, Clyde, that's really a phenomenon. That's pretty serious, don't you think?
Yeah, it's possible. I haven't researched that phenomenon that much, but there's at least 10,000 or nearly 10,000 Starlinks up there. Add another 4,000 or 5,000 satellites from other countries. And then on top of that, there's like 40,000 large pieces of junk. And if they start banging into each other, or if one of them does something to create a whole bunch of smaller particles, it can produce some kind of a chain reaction between other satellites.
Right. The Kessler effect, as Clyde's describing. And Clyde, something interesting here. I have it in my hand and I watch it. The movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. It's very interesting when you take a look at what the destruction happens in space of this, this hypothetical space station. It's kind of interesting to see with all that debris from satellites that either were, detonated, destroyed, or collided, like the Kessler effect. Mm-hmm. Clyde, if you're with us, you got the last word, and I think we're spot on with the Kessler effect, right?
I'm glad to hear that it's real.
Yeah, it is, my friend. And I think it's going to happen more and more. Sadly, we need to have garbage collection up in space, and that's another growth industry. If anybody out there wants to invest billions of dollars or try to do whatever it is to make it, right, Kevin? That could be a growth industry for getting a vacuum in space.
Yeah, I mean, if your orbit is less than about 220 miles, this stuff is going to come down and burn up in the atmosphere before too long. But above 300 miles, it's going to stay up there for a long time.
You're right. We say good morning to you, Clyde, in the great Republic of Texas. I love that state. Let's say good morning now. They've been patient on the line. Robert in North Carolina. You're on with our special guest, Kevin McEwen. How are you doing down there?
Hi, good morning. Pretty good. I try to see every lunar eclipse that I can, especially the full ones.
Yes.
And everyone has at least got to see the rings of Saturn in a small telescope or larger at least once in their life with their own eyes.
You bet, Robert. Oh, gosh. You're right. Yeah, Kevin, you do a lot of that. I do a lot. And again, this is something interesting, Robert. I'm so amazed that the callers are calling on these subjects because it is very, what's the word? It's addictive. I mean, these total eclipses of the moon. Why don't you, Kevin, just describe what's going to happen? You were talking about March 3 across the United States and good portion of North America. Describe to Robert the details of the next one.
Well, first I want to say that a lunar eclipse basically is proof that a flat Earth does not exist, okay?
Exactly. I love it.
Because you can see the shadow of the Earth falling on the moon, and it starts off as a penumbral eclipse, which is a very faint shadow, and then the partial eclipse occurs, and then as it gets deeper and deeper, you're going to see the redness of the Earth's umbra falling on the moon, and then as that last little bit of sunlight falling on the moon disappears, the moon is going to turn into what looks like a big copper penny. Okay?
Yes. That's true. And Robert, you're still with us, I know, because this eclipse, when we hear on the western part of the United States, will be a very early morning event for us. So in other words, the best for people who do not want to stay up late, but if you're a sky watcher, you're probably addicted to the darkness of the night. That one, I believe, takes place for the western part of the United States really early in the morning. And we can do a future show and update Robert and everybody on the more precise times and how to do that and where to get the information. Robert, you get the last word if you're still with us. I appreciate your commentary.
Yes, I was a teenager. I had a 60 millimeter refractor and a 6-inch reflector. And I was into astronomy. And boy, when I saw Saturn, I was just so fascinated. You could just see the tilt and the rings, and it's just like hanging there in the sky.
You're so right, Robert. You'll get a kick out of this, Kevin, I know. Many times when I'll take the bigger telescopes out and I show them Saturn, this year, of course, the rings are not as easy to see. But many people would come up to me and say, wait a minute, that's not real. Do you have like one of those Viewmaster things where you put a slide in there or something? And I go, no, it's really real. So, Robert, you're testifying on something that the ring system of Saturn is larger than the diameter of Jupiter, but be it so far away, without a lot of words, Robert, right? It's amazing to see it, and everybody should hopefully get a chance in their lifetime to see this unique, very strange planet. And unfortunately, the rings are going to disappear, right, Kevin, in about 300 million years, so take advantage.
The disappearance was last year. So the rings are starting to open up. Now, you're going to have to wait maybe about 3 years to see the rings properly again, okay?
Absolutely. Yes.
So, they're just totally beautiful. What can I say?
Well, Robert, without revealing your exact location, are you in darker skies or are you pretty much sandwiched in a light-polluted city? Tell me. You don't have to tell me.
Now I'm in kind of darker skies than I was in Suffolk County, New York.
Yeah.
And I don't have the telescopes, but I've got a pair of 8x35 binoculars.
There you
for
go.
the time being, anyway. I have something at least I can watch with.
Absolutely. I can do a lot, as we both are talking about. I'm going to give a website out here, Kevin. You know it well, but the audience may not. I recommend highly this website, theskylive.com. Now, we get no, finances from this, and I'm mentioning it only because the gentleman is in Italy, and we communicate a lot. In other programs, I've been promoting it. Folks, and I know, Kevin, you're a follower of this big time. I have never seen a better website as far as giving us what we can see, how to see it, from comets to the planets to everything and star charts. Would you not agree, Kevin? Of course, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's a very good website.
Yeah, it's amazing. So let's do this. Let's wrap it up. Thank you, Robert, in North Carolina. Keep doing, as they say, keep looking up, as one gentleman used to do on the public broadcasting, and sadly he passed away. And he always stood there with his little jackets from one of those companies. I forget. You remember who that was? The guy that was in the Miami Transit Planetarium. He used to do Jack Horkheimer.
Oh, yeah, that was gosh, what was his name? I can't remember now.
Yeah, it was Jack Horkheimer. That's the guy.
Jack Horkheimer, yeah.
Right. Amazing guy. But Kevin, give us some tips here. We always do the sky report here, and I give that out to people. Jupiter's the big deal right now. Talk about some of the things people can actually see, and we're talking to people now who live in bright cities. So here we go.
Yeah, okay. Well, things you can do from the city, from, right in the city limits, because I have a good friend that she lives in Valley Stream, okay, and the light pollution there is pretty bad, but you have planets, you have the planet Jupiter you can observe right now. It's just past opposition, so it's visible all night pretty much. You have Saturn going down in the west, and then, unfortunately, Mercury, Venus, and Mars are not visible right now. They're bunched behind the sun.
Yes.
If you want to use filters, an oxygen, an O3 filter can allow you to see around the light pollution and show up nebula very, very well. So the Orion Nebula will look just about as good as it will with an O3 filter if you're out in the country, okay?
So these are light pollution reduction filters, and they're not that expensive if you have a telescope, and you're amazed.
But if you get an O3 filter, my gosh, you can do a lot right in the city. And the secret is these filters will allow a very narrow band width through them and block out all of the light pollution.
It's amazing. And then if you really want to go into it, ladies and gentlemen, and again, we're not selling these products. We probably should, because that's out there, the big vast interest, and that's another subject. But I bought myself one of these little computerized digital little telescopes. And I happen to have one of these little things that apparently I have to use it, and I haven't started it up. You can put it in the light pollution of a city, right, Kevin? And you can set this thing up where it actually takes multiple images from brightly lit cities. I'm not kidding, folks. And it's called a dwarf. That's one of the models of one of the manufacturers. And what does it do? It actually shows you a picture as if you're way out in the country, because it stacks the images and does all the processing like the quote Photoshop.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Is that the C-Star thing?
No, I have one which is called a Dwarf Lab. If people look up, that's just one I have. We're not selling it here on the show, but hey, that's something that people, if you really live in a city, and they're not that expensive. I think I picked it up for like $300 or $400. And I tried it once, and I should, just lack of time here, no excuse. But that's what you do, ladies and gentlemen. And Kevin, I really appreciate your time. How do people get in touch with you if they have questions, any way that they can correspond with you? Tell us.
Well, I'm at, should I give out my email address maybe?
If you so desire, go ahead. You may be inundated, but I'm sure people want to hear from you, and I'm sure they can also email me, and I could forward it to you. My email here is just drsky@wabcradio.com. But go ahead, take a stab at it, see what happens.
Well, I'm at kmckeown2@yahoo.com, so that's KMCKEOWN2, that's the number 2, @yahoo.com.
Give it one more time and do it slow.
Okay, it's a KMCKEOWN2 @yahoo.com.
Okay, Kevin, the last question as we run out of time. The clock rules as we move through time and space. What's the most amazing thing you've seen in the number of years, which I'm sure is probably more than 50 years of viewing? Tell the audience from the visual side, what's the coolest and most incredible thing you've watched?
Maybe the Jupiter impact, the comet impact back in 1994, or the Leonid meteor shower when I counted 965 Leonid meteors in 1 hour. And that was the morning of November 17th, 2001. Okay?
Yes. I watched that one too, and we were sitting on top of a big home that somebody had on a mountaintop in Payson, Arizona.
Oh,
and
really?
I was with a friend of mine who's in the radio business.
Oh,
and
my
we were
gosh.
sitting there on this beautiful mansion of a place on top of a mountain. It wasn't ours. We were invited. And we must have counted, as you said, hundreds of meteors, but we actually heard something unusual and videotaped it. One of these big, bright Leonid fireballs came down and created, which is often disputed, but was real, a sonic boom as it came through the atmosphere, and it was recorded by credible scientists.
Awesome.
Kevin, the clock rules. We move around this particular star called the sun, and I appreciate your time here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Let's do it again, and hopefully if someday I can get out to where you are, find me the darkest place you can, because we'll spend the whole night and we'll be viewing, and who knows, maybe we'll invite everybody from this audience. We have other ways to do that here in Arizona.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time, and let's move on to hour 2. We're expecting Dave Wigington of geoengineeringwatch.org, updating us on things that are going on in the atmosphere. He's our go-to expert. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back on the other side of these commercial announcements and more on the Dr. Sky Experience as we welcome in hour number 2 of Theater of the Mind, so stay tuned.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
From the Powerhouse Blowtorch, Talk Radio 77 WABC, broadcasting out of the center of the universe, New York City, we welcome you, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Dr. Sky Experience, often referred to as Theater of the Mind, with great guests, as always, from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, celebrity guests, and we'd be remiss if we didn't mention stories of American exceptionalism. To get in touch with our special guest, the contact number is yours, 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. In this episode of Theater of the Mind, we continue with serious subjects. A regular guest here on the Dr. Sky Experience is Dane Wigington. His website, geoengineeringwatch.org, is the place to be. A little background on our special guest. Dane is the lead researcher and administrator for the website, as mentioned, geoengineeringwatch.org, and is the executive producer for the groundbreaking climate engineering documentary, The Dimming. He has a background in solar energy and was a former employee of Bechtel Power Corporation and was a licensed contractor in California and Arizona. Dane has devoted the last 20 years of his life to the constant research on the issue of covert global climate engineering operations and the effort to expose and halt them. With that, a hearty welcome as we welcome you on the West Coast. Good evening to you, and how are you today? Thanks, Dane, for being here.
My pleasure, Dr. Sky. Thank you for your continued willingness to investigate and expose what I would argue is the biggest untold story on the planet right now, and it's becoming ever harder to hide as the consequences from covert global climate intervention operations manifest by the day.
Yes. You're always a popular guest here, and again, ladies and gentlemen, questions and comments as we shift gears on subject. Again, 1-800-848-9222. You know, it's interesting. I opened up my computer about a week ago, and here in Arizona, and I know some of the legislators downtown, Republicans and Democrats, and I happened to look and see something that's come to my attention, and I think it's interesting to mention to the audience because it may be proliferating all over. The Arizona House of Representatives put forth a bill called HB 2056 entitled Geoengineering Prohibition, and there's many sponsors of this bill. Its overview, you know better, but let's enlighten the audience. It prohibits intentionally manipulating the environment through weather modification, aerosol injection, cloud seeding, or solar radiation modification. That to me is interesting because it goes right to the heart of what you talk about. Please continue, Dane, on this subject and how things are moving along. Define this bill in better detail than I did.
Well, this bill is quite well crafted. Representative Lisa Fink is spearheading this. There's a number of dedicated and assertive activists that are helping in that effort. Geoengineeringwatch.org has supplied our printed materials to the representatives to help introduce the issue to others. And those printed materials contain things like, for example, the federal gag order on all National Weather Service and NOAA employees, the nation's weathermen. Why would our government feel the need to gag the weathermen? And the satellite images we have, Dr. Sky, are profoundly shocking in those printed materials because we capture images off the NASA feed, the NASA satellite feed, images that are so shockingly unnatural that NASA feels the need to, once they find those images, to delete them from their feed. We catch them first. So there are things happening in our skies that if people saw these images and tried to explain them away, it's not possible. They have to be seen to be believed. So again, we live in I would argue at this point, a very perplexing orbiting asylum in which this elephant in the sky can go on and on, obvious climate engineering, and in fact, to dispel the condensation trail narrative, which we have the so-called experts still trying to double down on. But we have up-close photographs of these aircraft, nozzles visible, turning dispersions on and off. We try to track them with Flight Tracker. Many of these aircraft, the military tankers, have their transponders turned off. Why would that be? We have them leaving massive trails over non-commercial routes, X patterns, ovals. We have film footage of them going one direction, leaving no trail, and the opposite direction hours later, leaving a massive plume, or vice versa. I mean, we have the whole global climate science community saying, hey, we want to put jet aircraft in the sky to spray light-scattering particles, but, that's not what you're seeing. It's becoming ludicrous at this point, Dr. Sky.
Well, Dane, let's continue here. I mean, everybody has seen what we described, these trails in the sky. And I mentioned to you, and you correct me quickly, I just used the term contrails. And let's not split hairs, because obviously we're talking about what's really going on, in your opinion, behind the scenes. So here I go out the other day here in Arizona, beautiful day, not to rub it in, 80 degrees, what, in January? Are you kidding me? That's another subject.
Yes.
But here's the deal. I'm seeing these trails literally across the sky in what I consider to be, because we're watching skies, people obviously look up, and we're seeing this unbelievable extension. Like after the trail goes by from the aircraft, the thing disperses to a big fat ribbon. And you're absolutely right. It's diminishing what would have been, I gather, if those planes weren't there, it would have been pretty much a cloud day or a beautifully clear day. So obviously those trails, that's incredible. I never saw so many, and I took many pictures of those, and I'm sure many listeners have seen that. Describe these in detail. You're giving us the information saying, in your opinion, there's something going on, spraying. Describe that in detail in case nobody's heard this particular show or you as a guest.
Actually, again, I would refer to that it's not my opinion. It's not speculation, theory, hypothesis. When we have up-close film footage of these aircraft, I only ask people to believe what they can see with their own eyes.
Good.
And as we took a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to altitude, top scientists, and this is in our groundbreaking documentary, The Dimming, which is the standard for this issue for an A to Z education on it, 26 million plus views on YouTube and counting. There's no commercials, there's no advertising, there's no politics. We simply want this exposed and halted. And the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab that we were very fortunate to get at great expense and effort, no one will ever get access to that aircraft again, with top scientists in it, not a private party, I should say.
Okay.
And we measured what heavy aircraft were dispersing at altitude, processed that at Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York, one of the world's most renowned testing institutions, found exactly what we knew we'd find, starting with climate engineering elements like aluminum nanoparticles. That's a primary element named in climate engineering patents. And Dr. Sky, people might ask, aluminum, nanoparticles, bioavailable aluminum, isn't that toxic? Yes, it's extremely toxic.
Well, sure. I don't want to breathe in aluminum, and as you're describing, this is going on. And let me start from the beginning of this whole episode, as far as not the show.
Yes.
How long has this been going on from your research that now people are starting to maybe wake up about this? How long is this seeding of particles, aluminum and whatever? How long has this been going on?
Global climate engineering operations were first deployed over the polar regions immediately after World War II. And we can see the initial effect in the global temperature rise graphing that on a temperature trajectory that was going almost straight up at the end of World War II, suddenly, unexplainably, it levels off. And we can't know how much of that was actual temperature decrease or data falsification, but we would expect a very profound initial response with these operations over the polar regions, which are the air conditioners of the planet, and before the negative consequences kick in, because this is like a drug of sorts, a very toxic, damaging, contaminating drug, but as the negative consequences kick in, that requires more and more atmospheric aerosol dispersions, and that's exactly what's happened. So as we lose the ozone layer, as we disrupt the hydrological cycle, as these toxic elements, again, in the case of aluminum, toxic to all life forms, period, bioavailable aluminum, and that's the key too. Many people, so-called academia, Dr. Sky would say, well, aluminum is a major part of the Earth's strata. We should expect to see it everywhere. Not free-form aluminum. Free-form aluminum does not exist in nature. If it's free-form aluminum, it's been mined, refined, and dispersed. Again, primary element named in climate engineering patents. Because it's so reflective, that's why they use it without any consideration of the consequences. So as the negative aspects kicked in, we saw it leveling off of temperatures. People might remember in the 70s, you might remember this, Dr. Sky. In the mid-70s, you had some in the climate science community saying, well, we don't know what's going on. Maybe we're entering an ice age. We don't know why the temperatures didn't keep going straight up. And people use that as an argument against the climate science community. Well, they didn't know this was going on. As the negative consequences kicked in, temperatures start to go straight up again. 1998, the warmest year ever recorded to that point. And they doubled down on these operations, and they coined the term climate change because they knew they were going to be creating flash chemical cool downs.
Let's go take it further down the line here. Let's say, as you describe, I didn't know this. I think our audience is appreciative of hearing this. Let's say you're talking about, as you reported, during World War II or ran after they're seeding the atmosphere, let's say the polar regions, with these aluminum particulates. Could that be a reason, I mean, simply, I'm not a weatherman, that you could say that this is forcing the polar vortex, which you see wide variations of the polar vortex. We hear this and see people all over the United States and around the world seeing a definitive change in how the winter is affecting. Look at the temperatures in the Southwest. We're looking here, I don't know what they are in California, but what they're saying here is we're looking at 80-degree days. I'll take it, but not if it's eventually going to destroy the entire, climate of the earth. So is that the direct thing? You're saying what? Not to put words in your mouth. The seeding of this aluminum particulate, even back by World War II, that's obviously what? Shifting the polar vortex, where if they didn't do it, maybe weather systems would be different, or what we called normal. Take it from there. That's interesting.
Let me back into this. First, we can say this definitively. There is no natural weather anywhere anymore. And the qualification for that is once you disrupt the entire system, you can't say that event would have happened in that way at that place at that time. And indeed, the entire system is disrupted. We have countries around the globe actively or passively participating, again, not speculating. We're relying on government documents, some as long as 800 pages, posted at geoengineeringwatch.org. One particular document from 1978, U.S. congressional document 800 pages long, outlines the intergovernmental cooperation, even between, quote, otherwise adversarial nations, because of the cross-border ramifications of these operations. So, and worse still, although these toxic particles can and do lower daytime high temperatures or induce chemical ice nucleation, which is the flash cooldowns that we see happening, they trap more heat than they deflect. So they're adding more fuel onto an already damaged planet that's definitely heating rapidly, and every cool down that they carry out worsens the overall meltdown of the planet. So this is not any legitimate form of mitigation, and we know these operations are being used for a form of covert weather warfare, and we have countries admitting that on the record. We have, in the case of Iran, on the floor of the UN with their meteorologists that have sophisticated monitoring equipment, stating that the U.S. has been cutting, or NATO, in this case they referenced, has been cutting off their precipitation for 40 years. And what do we have right now? We have that situation is so bad in Iran right now that they're talking about evacuating the capital of Tehran, a city of 10 million people.
Oh, yeah, and all the unrest going on top of that. That's a hellish place to have to be, but that's a whole other story. But, Dane, let me just jump in on this. So, folks, if this conversation doesn't light up the phone lines, I don't know what we could be doing to do it, and not because we want just people to just call. Obviously, the concerns that many people have out there, the number's 1-800-848-9222, a rare opportunity to speak with someone who's dedicated his life to the subject. And, of course, we always welcome him and his experiences talking about what's really happening out there as the world is changing. And I always say it this way, you follow the money. What's the backstory on this from all your research? Who's behind all this? And they always say, what? Follow the money on stuff like this. There's a reason, a deep-seated reason why they're doing all this.
It's bigger than that. There are disaster capitalists. We know we have weather trading derivatives and many making money from that arena. We have aluminum-resistant seeds from companies like Monsanto. So we always have disaster capitalists, but the ultimate underlying foundational motivation for these operations is far bigger. It's an attempt to pacify the population, to confuse the population as to the true level of damage already done to the planet. And they can do this by engineering cool down. So you just said you're 80 in Arizona.
Right.
I'm in a formerly lush forest in Northern California at a elevation of over 2,000 feet. We should be very cold right now. Last night, 8-9 o'clock at night, it's 70 degrees.
Wow.
That's after dark with the warm wind blowing from the north. That's about 40 degrees above normal. Nighttime lows are warming twice as fast as daytime highs. So when they can engineer a snowstorm, for example, in Florida, which, by the way, is scheduled for the next few days, another snowstorm in Florida with lizards, the iguanas falling out of the trees because it's so cold.
Sad, yeah.
And 1 year ago, almost a year ago, January 21st, coincidentally, that was the date of the changing of the guard in this country, right? We had snowstorm in New Orleans and Florida at the same time.
Yes, I remember that. Yes, I did. That's very unusual. I don't think New Orleans has ever had any incident where that much snow accumulated.
You're correct. Never before recorded. What didn't they tell us on the same day? It was above freezing and raining in the Arctic Circle. Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, and Siberia, all over the Arctic Circle, above freezing and raining while there's a blizzard in New Orleans and Florida. On the money, on the funding, again, this is Black Ops money. Central bankers are behind it all, and we know this is a fact of record. Pentagon's missing, I think the latest figure was $31 trillion since about the year 2000. Where did that money come from, let alone what did it go to?
Exactly. And let's not hope that we're too busy not to pay attention. That's why we do shows like this. And we're not conspiracy. At least this is what I'm saying. Let the guest speak on his with his own information. But the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, something is indeed happening here. And is it just aluminum particulate, or are there other things that you can tell us to add to the conversation of what this seeding might be all about? Is it just aluminum, or what else is coming down?
Well, we know from lab testing, and in fact, there's hundreds of lab tests done near the West Coast. With the University of Minnesota, about 500 more were conducted. So we have aluminum, barium. This is, in fact, there's likely many more elements, but unless we know what we're looking for, you can't find what you don't know what to look for. But we have aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, surfactants, graphene. It's quite a toxic mix. Right. And we have, when you mix elements, for example, we all have mercury in us because we have amalgam fillings. We have mercury used as an adjuvant in injections, vaccines. We have the coal fire burning plants that put mercury in the atmosphere. We're inhaling a certain degree of it. So we all have mercury in us. Now we have aluminum in us. Every person we test, hair, blood, urine, has aluminum.
Amazing.
When you combine
scary.
those, it is scary because both elements are highly toxic in and of themselves. When you combine those two elements, we do have peer-reviewed study to prove that the overall toxicity, it's called synergistic toxicity, increases the overall toxicity by as much as 100 times. It's amazing any of us can walk and talk, but it's taking its toll on, for example, insect populations down 80 to 90% right now. Globally, that should scare the hell out of people.
Well, let me ask you this on the personal, though, without naming people. I wonder how much negativity and, anti-gravity, using a science term, that you've taken on this, because not everybody, if you walk into these big meetings, I know you do a lot with these, town halls and these different city and state councils. I mean, obviously, some of these people are going to look at you and go, what? Tell us. I mean, not everybody's going to say, oh, Dane, yeah, you're right. Let's stop this. What kind of resistance do you get? Talk about that.
Oh, a lot. And for a lot of reasons. Right. For a lot of reasons, because when I first started this journey 20-plus years ago, I could only hear my own voice coming back to me. But as people along the way in very high posts like the Canadian Minister of Defense, Air Force generals, former government scientists, legislators, as I've continued this journey and people like that have been woken up and they realize they are going down in the same boat. Half the boat doesn't sink. You don't have... I've seen a cartoon of a boat as it's sinking. The front end comes up in the air, and you have the people in the front of the boat saying, sure glad our half of the boat isn't sinking. That's not how it works.
Right.
The whole boat goes down. So as people realize they're going down with the ship, they've joined this fight. And again, the gravity of this threat, the immediacy of this threat cannot be overstated because two of those elements I named, polymer fibers and graphene, are used militarily for biological carrier agents. What's that mean? Means to carry a pathogen from the clouds to the ground to infect the population below. Boy. And we own an audio of the world's second most recognized geoengineer, Dr. Ken Caldera, stating in his words what he did for the U.S. Department of Defense was to design pathogens to infect the populations below. Imagine that. On the COVID outbreak, during one phase we had 85 countries infected in 3 days. That's indicative of an airborne dispersion. We had Italian scientists identify CV19 attached to airborne particulates. And to add credence to all of this, we know from the Washington Post and other major media sources that even as far back as 1977, up to that date, the U.S. military had conducted no less than 239 open-air biological tests on innocent, unknowing U.S. civilians. I challenge anybody, everybody, research every single thing I'm saying.
And that's why I say, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions and concerns, I would imagine if there's any program that would light up the phone lines, 1-800-848-9222, on this very interesting conversation we're having. We like to call Theater of the Mind, opening people's minds on these great mysteries. And we're moving more into the weather side of the Dr. Sky experience when we talk astronomy, space, aviation, weather. But equally important, I suggest this, and Dane would, of course, wholeheartedly recommend you doing this. Go to geoengineeringwatch.org and highlight the website where you can actually watch this particular groundbreaking documentary entitled The Dimming. That's a very interesting one. I've watched it before, and you have so many people that are on the credible side. And describe it again. You have former generals in the military. You have other serious scientists saying, watch out. Hopefully it's not too late because something's really happening in what the opinion.
Two U.S. Air Force generals, former Canadian Minister of Defense, former government scientists, former Fish and Game scientists, former U.S. presidential cabinet members. The list goes on and on. Top scientists as well. And to back up what you mentioned earlier on the manipulation of atmospheric wind currents, jet stream trajectories, the sprayed particulates, they're electrically conductive, and they ionize the atmosphere, which makes it more conducive for ground-based frequency transmitters like HAARP, H-A-A-R-P. Encourage your listeners, that's the acronym, to search
I
HAARP.
know that one. All right.
You know that, so to search HAARP, look at the images. That's an ionosphere heater. It's played off as a benign research facility, which couldn't be further from the truth. It's a weapon of mass destruction. And HAARP and the patents or all available science data do not dispute this because it can cause an electrical chain reaction in the ionosphere by transmitting 3.6 million watts of power. And I hope it's clear I'm not shooting from the hip. I know this data inside out, upside down, backwards. So it can trigger an electrical chain reaction in the ionosphere that superheats that portion of the atmosphere that causes it to expand up and down. The downward push affects tropospheric.
And that's Nick Begich that we're talking about.
Yes.
When I started doing this ancient history, we used to have him on this HAARP subject.
Yes.
And of course, you're also going to discuss this in greater detail. But we're almost up at the break here, the hard break. And when I come back here with You're Okay, I'd like to get into this particular Arizona House bill and talk about the provisions, because this is not just for the people of Arizona. You're going to tell us that there's so many states that are also trying to do this, and the definitive provisions. I'll get into that, so you can comment on that. And ladies and gentlemen, an interesting subject here, because when you look out into the sky, what do we talk about? The Dr. Sky experience. Our previous guest, as you know, we were talking with Kevin, talking about what you can see, and with the plethora of satellites and all other interference in the sky, obviously, even if you're not a big fan of astronomy, this one, I think, really knocks it out of the park. It's so interesting to listen to this because, I was watching the other day, not to be overly repetitive, Dane. I'm watching all these trails in great multitude across the sky, and now you're describing what these are. More with our very special guest, Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org, here on the Dr. Sky Experience with you, ladies and gentlemen, 1-800-848-9222. We will be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The deliberate, large-scale manipulation of the Earth's climate to offset global warming is a nightmare fix for climate change. So says author Jeff Goodell. 33 minutes after the hour, we continue discussing this. A very interesting guest, Dane Wigington. Geoengineeringwatch.org is his home base. And we continue here. This is interesting. The number of people that are calling here. Let's say good morning as we open up the phone lines to Pete in Staten Island. You're on with Dane Wigington. How are you doing this morning? Thanks, Pete.
Hey, Dr. Sky. Pleasure to speak with you. I need your help here because I saw an eclipse in 1974. I was in Martha's Vineyard with, at the time, my girlfriend, Carly Simon. Now, the eclipse was in 1970. Did anything occur in 1974, maybe a partial eclipse? Because I am like battering my head. I said, in 1970, I was 15. In 1974, I was 19, and that's when I was with her. So,
well, you were lucky to be with Carly Simon because she talked about the eclipse up there. That was the one that we saw in July of 1972. But Pete, just to stay on measure, and I appreciate your question, do me this if you would. Send me an email at drsky@wabcradio.com because I don't have an answer, but I'm sure there was. Just send me a quick email and I'll research this either way because I know there was something, but I'm always honest. I'm not sure what exactly happened at that time frame, but wow, we could do a show with you about Carly Simon. But thanks for the call. I appreciate it greatly. Dane, this is interesting as we continue to talk about geoengineering. Let's say good morning to Christine in Manhattan. She's been patient, and you're on with Dane. This is a fascinating subject, don't you think, Christine? How you doing?
It's fascinating beyond. It's incredible. And it's so amazing. My mind is boggled because I'm a New Yorker, and I was trotting around in Wegmans supermarket tonight, and as usual, as I always do, gossiping with other New Yorkers, we had a conversation exactly about geoengineering and how why is it 50 one day and freezing the next. We know something is going on. They're manipulating everything you talked about, but we didn't know the details. And this is New Yorkers. I talk with a bunch of people. Everybody knows something is going on with weather. So I want to ask you, is there a book that was published? You mentioned somebody named Jeff Cadell.
Well, I was mentioning, that was the quote that I was giving, but Dane is obviously encouraging people to go take a look at his website, to the dimming. So, Dane, why don't you jump in on this? Because
what I would suggest,
go ahead, please, Dane.
The dimming would give you an excellent A to Z with film footage of top experts, Air Force personnel, again, Canadian Minister of Defense, former presidential cabinet members, government scientists, list goes on and on. That would give you the best A to Z. Again, it's at over, in spite of social media censorship, it's at over 26 million views on YouTube. There's no advertising. There's no politics. You can share it with anybody of any particular stripe, and they will look at the data only, which is all we care about in this scenario. And those cool downs you're speaking about, that's called chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. So as the days heat up, and it's extraordinarily warm in many parts of the world, if there's moisture available, they seed those clouds with chemical nucleating elements. These are patented processes. It creates a very cold, dense layer of air that sinks to the surface. It's just like you have your open-air freezer in the market with no top on it, but everything's frozen in that basin because the cold air sits in the basin. So these are toxic elements. They're very slippery. If it's frozen precipitation, it's very slippery because there's surfactants in this mix. It's to keep the particles from coagulating together. So surfactants are what makes soap slippery. It's definitely part of the mix. Our tests prove it. So this is basically all of us on planet Earth are at this point lab rats in a global climate engineering Manhattan project with catastrophic consequences already. And there are many more layers to this that are even more nefarious. But the bottom line is the public needs to know. The public has a right to know.
Christine, you get the last word. Bringing up this subject is so important. Please continue. Did we lose Christine?
Watch.org.
Oh, go ahead, please.
Geoengineering.
Where do I get this information? Geoengineeringwatch.org?
Yes, exactly.
That's correct, Christine.
We're the biggest website in the world.
You'll learn a lot.
And it can be difficult to find us on Google because Google's doing everything they can to censor us. But if you search geoengineeringwatch.org, you'll find us.
Yeah, Christine, it pops up on my phone, and it should pop up on yours. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate your time with us on these subjects, and it's great to talk about and with people listening that experience these subjects called geoengineering. Thank you, Christine. You know, I wanted to get back to this Arizona House bill. It may seem small to the whole nation, but HB 2056, geoengineering prohibition, I'm only going to read the 3 provisions, and I want you to comment on it, but take us out of the state of Arizona to all the other states that are doing this. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the provisions. It repeals and replaces existing statutes that prohibit a person or business from conducting any weather control or cloud modifications. 2, stipulates that regardless of any other law, a person cannot engage in geoengineering, which is a defined term. And 3, defines geoengineering as the intentional manipulation of the environment by polluting the Earth's atmosphere or surface through weather modification, aerosol injection, cloud seeding, or solar radiation modification. And I'm not going to bore the audience with reading all the way down this page, but the bill, as you know, you've studied this. This is why. Is this one of the first in the country to take a stab at this? Describe it and tell us where else this is happening in the country.
No, it's about number 36.
Oh, okay.
We have this legislation working on. It's already passed in Tennessee, Florida, Louisiana. And these bills are symbolic because they're not enforceable, but they matter. They matter because it's putting it on the radar for people. And part of the description...
So you're saying they're not enforceable? I didn't hear you.
Nope, they're not enforceable. So, again, there's no known way to enforce this yet because of the airspace where this is taking place. It's under federal jurisdiction.
You may have to, Dane, be in a better spot for this because we're having a hard time hearing you. Let's try it again if you move around a little.
I haven't moved. I'm on a landline. Shouldn't matter at all. I'm on a landline. Can you hear me?
Well, I guess we're going to have to call, Dane, if you can hear me, I think we're going to have to call you back and see if we can get a better connection on this. If the studio thinks that's the best answer to this. What do you say, gentlemen? Okay, I think we lost Dane. But again, what we're talking about here, this is quite fascinating as you've been listening, ladies and gentlemen. So many people, I'm sure, want to jump in on the line. I'd be more than happy to handle as many of these questions as we can, but I'm not the expert. 1-800-848-9222, bringing us to the center of the conversation of what's really happening in the opinion of our very special guest, Dane Whittington, geoengineeringwatch.org. Let's try it again, Dane. So we were losing you somehow through maybe a solar flare or some other activity out there. Go ahead.
I don't know. I'm on a landline. I didn't move. It's
that's really strange. If you're on a landline, wow,
I'm on a landline.
That's really bizarre.
Solid line. So the bottom line is, though,
go ahead.
Again, though it's not enforceable, the symbolic nature of this matters a great deal to wake people up to what's going on above their heads. We're hoping, for example, in the case of, I'm looking at some media that's covering Senator John Kavanaugh right now as part of this effort, and the term chemtrails is constantly being used. The article will indicate he's using it. That's a mistake. The chemtrails term, there's no science basis for the term. It's fine for personal conversation, but we're playing chess. We need to play effectively and efficiently. That is the instant marginalization term by the climate science community, by official sources, media. If we stick to and I'll give an example, by the way. Former Arizona Senator Kelly Ward. I don't know if you ever heard that name before.
Oh, I know her very well. I personally know her. I mean, and all these legislators like Kavanaugh, I mean, he was a native New Yorker. He's a fighter. And that's why I'm saying I brought this to the attention of this audience, not only because of Representative Fink, but I know him. And he doesn't suffer fools easily, in my opinion, nor did Kelly Ward.
I'm very grateful for him and Kelly. I'm grateful for both of them. I just want to give an example of hopefully that Senator Kavanaugh will start to use the science terms, because Kelly Ward serves as an example. She went to a chemtrails meeting in Kingman, Arizona. The media immediately crucified her as Chemtrails Kelly, and
I am familiar. Yes.
So again, that didn't help us. If it was a geoengineering meeting, they wouldn't have labeled her geoengineering Kelly. They wouldn't have gone there. So again, we need to beat them at their own game. So semantics are important in this scenario. And the gravity, as we talked off air, Dr. Sky, the gravity and immediacy of this threat cannot be overstated. It's contaminating the entire planet with 40 to 60 million tons of toxic nanoparticles annually. That's a ubiquitous contamination. It's showing up everywhere. We have current peer-reviewed science studies, even one a few days old, indicating that this particulate pollution is exponentially worse than they have told us so far. And I'm not denying industrialized pollution at all. We know that's there. But we found manufactured nanoparticles in our testing at atmosphere. That means it's not just industrial pollution.
Interesting stuff. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, still time. 1-800-848-9222 if you have concerns either way on this particular subject, as we do what we call theater of the mind. What is that, in case you're curious? The great mysteries are brought to our attention through the voice and, of course, the guest and myself as a host. But what we do is we talk about things that obviously we can't see, because this is radio. And we're wondering, your imagination can go, each different direction, but always great guest here on the Dr. Sky Experience. But Dane, when we come back from this particular break, let's talk a little bit more about these things and how people can really become the catalyst in this. I mean, legislators and stuff like that, that's good. But for the people that are listening to this particular show, to give us hope in a world where many things, like the Great Temptations song, "A ball, the world is a ball of confusion," let's try to have some answers to stay positive in this brand new year. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Always great guest. If you happen to have some recommendations that you'd like to hear, no guarantee that we'll get them all, the email and any other emails you want to send me, just drsky@wabcradio.com. We will be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Great interview that I had today with one of the members of the Temptations. Their national tour, ladies and gentlemen, continues. And what an apropos song. We talked to Terry Weeks of the Temptations, an amazing, iconic band. 46 minutes after the hour, we continue to the top of the hour with our special guest. Let's go to the callers and say they've been patient. Let's say good morning to Tony in Clifton. Tony, you're on with Dane Willington. How are you this morning?
Good morning, gentlemen. I have been, of course, like everyone else, thinking about what's going on in Minnesota with all the cars that are trying to hit our ICE agents, people who are protesting. Yes. And I saw on the news tonight that they said the weather, the protests aren't as bad as they could be because the weather is actually, it's like a light snow, but it's very cold. It's in the single digits there. And when I was thinking about geoengineering tonight, and I'm sorry to just throw this out there, but this is a perfect night because they said people were pretty railed up even in that weather. I guess they're used to it. We could do a little geoengineering to sort of, give them like a month of like what would we say, the North Pole, Dr. Sky, and maybe that would pull them up. What are you guys thinking about that? I'm sorry.
I think Dane might disagree because the whole problem is manipulating the weather, right, Dane? We don't want to do that. That's not what the whole thing is about. But Tony, he's got a lot to say. I'm going to let Dane carry the ball here. You got the floor, sir.
Tony's onto something, and I don't disagree at all. Okay. So while the West is broiling, whatever the motive, whatever the agenda, that cool down is not nature. We've tested those materials. In fact, again, working with UC Minnesota in the past, it's a very consistent practice there. Let's look at other incidents. Do you both remember the October surprise for the Wall Street protesters? Do you remember that?
No, I don't, but tell us more in case we don't know.
October surprise snowstorm out of nowhere. And we captured, with the Dakota protesters, this is routine for them. I want to make that clear. We have Project Popeye in Vietnam. The U.S. military was so successful at controlling precipitation in Vietnam in the 60s that INMOD treaties were passed in the 70s, International Environmental Modification Treaties. They are very effective. They know exactly what they're doing. And I want to make this clear, too. The localized, publicized cloud seeding operations are not climate engineering. They're used to distract from climate engineering. A single-engine propeller-driven airplane with a few flares on the wings that might distribute 5 pounds of material in a single flight is not a KC-135 military tanker that can drop 100 tons in a single flight. So, again, I would not write that off, Tony. I would not marginalize what you just
I hear you.
speculated about. And again, whatever the motive, we know that the cold over that area, and especially around the Great Lakes areas, the Great Lakes are used as a moisture source to chemically nucleate the moisture, and this is common practice. The Chinese government announced they were creating snowstorms. Anybody can search Chinese scientists, engineer snowstorm, and they'll find all major media covered it. Everybody, Popular Science, MSNBC, Fox News.
Totally amazing, Dane.
All of them. So,
Tony, you get the last word. We got a full board, so please continue as brief as possible. But thank you for being part of our show.
Well, I don't want to say anything negative on the airways, but you guys gave me a good laugh tonight. Maybe somebody out there in Radio Land is listening. You guys have a good night. God bless you both.
Well, thank you for being part of the show, Tony. Let's say good morning to Carlos in California as he's on with Dane Whittington. Good morning. Thank you for your patience and your comment or question or observation. Go right ahead.
Well, I wanted to get your opinion on something that I saw this must have been about 1987, 1980. I was about 7 or 8 years old. We're in the backyard in a tree house my brother built, and it was nighttime. It must have been about 9 or 10 at night, and all of a sudden the whole sky flashed like a fluorescent white. It was completely white. I'm in the notion thinking it was a supernova. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we've ever been able to see one with the naked eye.
Well, nothing like that, Carlos. I mean, not to take away from our subject, but anything like that. I've seen strange occurrences in the sky, but what time of year was it? Do you remember? Maybe there's a possible answer that I can give you. It might be, but what time of the year was it?
It was summertime. It was okay because I remember it was a hot night, and must have been June or July. 87 or 88. And I mean, the whole sky turned completely fluorescent white for about a full second. And it was so bright that people inside their homes started coming out.
Well, the only thing I can say on this, and Dane, of course, talking about weather modification here through the geoengineering, but from my own experiences, distant thunderstorms, this happens in the Midwest a lot. When these thunderstorms move away, they're talking maybe 100 miles away, it's not improbable, and it could happen over California when these, thunderstorms are over the Sierras, that momentarily the sky lights up because of incredible lightning. But it's not lightning that you'd see, Carlos, right near you. It's something way distant, and I have seen that phenomenon in the sky. But, Dane, according to what Carlos is saying, anything that relates to the subject that we're talking about from your side, who knows?
A meteor could do the same if it exploded properly. And we do have, in the case of the Northern Lights, we know the science data confirms conclusively that ionosphere heaters like HAARP in Alaska can create aurora borealis effects. And as far as those, the previous caller that finds humor, and I'm not sure what she meant in this issue, but I assure you, in the coming weeks and months, with the severity of what we will see, no one will be laughing. And the gravity of this issue is beyond what most have any inkling of right now.
I always appreciate Tony and her commentary, Dane, and I appreciate her calls too. Carlos, we're going to have to end it there. That's a speculation on my part, and Dane's given his opinion. We appreciate your call out there in California, and hope you'll have a good morning and call our show again. Let's close out the show as we continue. Let's say good morning to Max in Manhattan. Good morning. Thanks for your patience. How are you doing this morning?
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sky and Dr. Whittington. Given that we're approaching the year 6,000, the 6,000-year lunar cycle, could we be approaching some sort of end of days scenario? That's a question, and then more of a statement, and then two questions after this. Is there anything with chelation therapy or EMP clothing that would help us with aluminum poisoning?
Wow, very good questions there, Dane. And before we end the show, as you answer to Max, I wanted you to give us some positivity of what we can do as civilians in the subject. But to answer Max's question, please go.
Let me back into that first. Yes and yes. Yes, there is chelation that should be done, needs to be done carefully. I would speak to a nutritionalist first, has to be done progressively and carefully. Yes, there are certainly various types of EMP apparel, and we know that the frequency transmissions from climate engineering operations are 10 times plus more powerful than communications transmissions. So we hope the people focusing on communications transmissions and the dangers of that focus on this as well. As far as the cycles that certain cultures have called out and seen, it's certainly interesting, Max, and we have the Hopi Indians, for example, stated at the time of great change there would be cobwebs spun in the sky. That certainly seems to fit what we see. So bottom line is, playing God with the weather can only end poorly, and we know this is not benevolent. I want to make that clear. These operations are malevolent. They're about power and control. They're done under the guise of slowing the warming of the planet, but we know it's making it worse, not better. No surprise there either. So again, this is a fight we must win, or far sooner than almost any can imagine. Nothing else will matter.
Max, you get the last word. Thanks for being part of the show. Interesting commentary from Dan.
Okay. I know there's a place in New York that sells EMP clothing. What type, with what gauss should we be searching? And there are separate types of chelation therapy. Some has magnesium, others do not. Is there one that we should be gravitating to?
I don't want to give medical advice. Again, I would speak to a nutritionalist, but I would point this out, that although the frequency transmissions are definitely a problem, the air we breathe is a bigger problem, and we're inhaling copious amounts of highly toxic nanoparticulate matter that's very bioavailable and bioaccumulative. So I would argue that whatever we're doing to take care of our health, we must at the same time fight this battle. We have to stop what's happening in our skies.
Absolutely. Max in Manhattan, always appreciate your commentary and
Thank you, Max.
making the show possible. Thank you so much for being part of the show. We got a few more minutes. We got to close it out, sad to say, but time, of course, rules the clock here.
You mentioned what people can do, and again,
what can they do to help to solve this problem? I mean,
no one should underestimate how much they can do. The End of the Dimming documentary is highlighting on exactly that any one of us could be the final pebble to trigger the landslide of awakening. We must reach critical mass of awareness. Key, credibility. That's the key. Keep it on solid ground with solid data, and that's what we disseminate at geoengineeringwatch.org, and share credible data from a credible source. Start spot fires of awareness. Ask other people to do the same. If we all work together, we could push this to the full light of day much faster than people would imagine, and that would hopefully trigger the awakening of our military brothers and sisters, that they're not doing something benevolent, not something for the common good, not something for American citizens. They're literally participating in their own demise. If we can wake them up, we would hope that they would rethink what they're participating in.
Dane, just a few more minutes before we close out, but I want to ask you this. As we look without horse blinders on, it's not just a problem here over the United States. Define it purposefully. Where else is this going on? If you say the word globally, obviously, then it's a big, big, big concern. But describe the parameters of this. It just doesn't go over the United States.
It's absolutely global, and we have Senate documents to prove that. We have, again, otherwise adversarial countries actively or passively participating in this. The global climate conferences, like the COP conferences, are a smoke and mirrors facade behind closed doors. They are actively or passively pushing and compelling countries to participate in these operations. The U.S. military is by far the biggest participant. The U.S. military has 3 times more aerial tankers than all other militaries in the world combined. So that ought to make clear who's the biggest player. But it's global without question. Each country has their own motives and agendas behind these operations, none of them benevolent.
Wow, you've said a lot, and it's very purposeful here. Dane Wigington, ladies and gentlemen, one more time, geoengineeringwatch.org. Recommended that you watch this particular documentary right off the front of his website, or, of course, on the Internet on YouTube, entitled The Dimming. Interesting, just released groundbreaking documentary that I'm sure will open up people's minds, and that's exactly what we do here. Dane, thank you. It's always a pleasure, and we'll do this and continue to talk about how we can take action as individuals in a world where maybe many people feel they have no say. We say differently here on this particular program. Thanks for being with us, Dane. Always appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Scott.
My pleasure. You know, ladies and gentlemen, just about 24 hours away from now or less, we continue with our Saturday night, midnight to 2 a.m. Sunday program. Stay tuned. A very special guest on a subject that's fascinating, very deep, but I'm sure you have an interest in, and at least I'm hoping you do, Dr. Don Lincoln of Fermilabs on particle physics, the mystery of what lies below the atom. Why is that important in many people's minds? Because in CERN, this particular gigantic particle accelerator is experimenting with different particles, and some say there may be a dark side to that. I don't know. They know, and Dr. Don Lincoln does. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, to this particular, incredible radio station. And many thanks to John Katzimatidis, owner and operator, and from the executive staff to Chad Lopez. Stay tuned as we pass the torch of conversation to more exciting radio as we go deeper into your morning, midway past the midpoint of January 2026 with TJ McCormick for The Other Side of Midnight. And thanks to Tony and Bill, our helmsman that makes the show sound as good as you would expect. Peace, happiness, and ladies and gentlemen, as we always say, clear skies. We'll be back in less than 24 hours with another edition of Theater of the Mind, the Dr. Sky Experience, here on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Every week, the Payne family cuts straight to the real financial story.
The one question, Bob, everyone's asking is, are we in an artificial intelligence bubble? You've been through boom and bust. What do you think?
No hype, no myths. Just what actually matters to your money.
Does feel very similar to what we experienced in the 90s. Where are we, though? Are we in 1995, 1997, 1999?
Listen to the Pain Points of Wealth on the Red Apple Podcast Network.